Yeah, so we are now, we started statement 7, yeah? All deities possess the qualities of the major and minor marks. So at the heart of this statement is basically Gilbert Rinpoche reminding us that the crucial point to understand about the characteristics of the Idam deities, the various elements of the Idam deities, whether it's a Idam deity that is a single deity without elaborating into the retinues, in the 4 directions, there are these 4 emanations, and in the in-between direction, there are 4 more, and so on and so forth, until the Kalachakra deity, in its most extensive form, has 722 deities. And then each of the deities, have its own characteristics, right? Or then simply we talk about Jinrisi with, 4 arms, that form. The main point of the statement is Gilbert Rinpoche reminding us that these characteristics given in each of the idams that the Buddha taught, their characteristics are based on the Buddha qualities, more so than based on our confusion. Yeah, more so than based on our confusion. So we should not, dwell on how, oh, I like angry, fierce-looking deities, so I'm going to practice fierce-looking deities. I like to be a powerful woman. I will practice Vajavarahi. I want to bring out my, develop my toughness. I will practice this. Or I need to have more peace. I'm going to practice that. It's not wrong, but it's an error in our understanding. Then we are turning the characteristics of the deities into mundane meaning. So Chodra's commentary, yeah? First sentence in the middle there. And specifically, since the Vajrayana is the embodiment of the marvelous dependent origination, in other words, the whole system of Vajrayana, the whole level of Vajrayana practice is based on dependent origination, which the Buddha already taught at the Hinayana level, further taught, and Mahayana is also based on that. Vajrayana is also based on that, but of a marvelous dependent origination. So what does marvelous dependent origination can mean here? It's not like there is a dependent origination that contradicts the dependent origination already taught at the Hinayana level. But here, marvelous in the sense of it's much more subtle and much more effective. So he says, since basically the Vajrayana system since the Vajrayana system, is such a kind of profound method, therefore, so since the Vajrayana is the embodiment of the marvelous dependent origination, there's no need to mention that the major and minor marks, even each of the attributes, seats, and so forth, must necessarily evoke their respective qualities. Must necessarily evoke their respective qualities, must necessarily be based on the Buddha qualities. Since sentient beings are taught to be the essence of the Buddha right from the time of the ground, from the perspective of the true reality, the major and minor marks are complete. So meaning, in fact, these major and minor marks are already complete within us from the perspective of true reality. So on the level of ground, so now it's talking about ground, path, and result. On the level of ground, the major and minor marks of Buddha, meaning, in other words, that's a poetic way of saying that the Buddha qualities, they are already present within us. At the time of the path, it is necessary to practice that the nature of the white and red element, the moon and the sun and the vowels and the consonants, are the essence of the major and minor marks. These are different elements taught in extensive deity yoga practice, extensive idam practice. The white and the red element, recognizing the nature of the white and red element. The white and red element, on the grossest level, is talking about the reproductive elements necessary for conception to take place. But the more subtle meaning of the red and white element, that is taught in Vajrayana. And how that is related to the visualization of the sun disk and the moon disk, and how that is related to the visualizations that involve the vowels and the consonants. Some of you have done the Naratmya sadhana, then you are familiar with that. The vowels and the consonants coming together. So all of that. So he's saying then, on the level of the path, meaning then when we apply this principle that the qualities are already present innately, on the level of the path, meaning when we then apply that to habituate our minds, to purify away negativity, then it is given in the Vajrayana methods in terms of knowing the nature of the white and red element, the moon and the sun, the vowels and the consonants, and so forth, and all those are embodiments of those Buddha qualities. Then at the time of the result, one obtains the Sambhogakaya ornamented with the major and minor marks. Now, of course, implied there, if you achieve the Sambhogakaya with the major and minor marks, then of course the Nirmanakaya, the physical major and minor marks, will also manifest. So the Vajrapanjara Tantra says, I am the body that is ornamented with the 32 major and 80 minor marks. Moreover, the Dompe Gyud says, within the very blissful vulva of the lady, the teacher possesses the 32 major and the principal 80 minor marks. Very provocative language is used in Vajrayana. Furthermore, the Hevajra Tantra says, in the blissful place of the lady's vulva, the teacher possesses the 32 major and the principal 80 marks. Still further, the Paramadi says, the major marks of the Lord, who is the supreme victor, are the 32 in number, and the excellent minor marks are 80. All of these, without exception, exist in one's body and are to be practiced by the mantra adepts to obtain the stage of the Supreme Lord of the Mandala. Therefore, there's no need to mention the main deity, but the retinue too possesses the attributes of the major and minor marks. And even those of the retinue that possess animal heads must be practiced as being endowed with the qualities of the major and minor marks. Moreover, the retinue deities too are not separate mental continua that arise from the display of the main deity's gnosis. Meaning, like even the In some of these mandala, there are these animal-headed deities, like in the Vajrakilaya mandala, in the 100 Peaceful Wrathful Deities mandala. Yeah, it says none of this should be thought of as, mundane. So the Hevajratantra teaches, I am the one who explains, I am the teaching. I am the disciple possessing qualities. I am the mundane and the transmundane. I am the teacher of the world and the goal. I am the innate gnosis. So then now, Chodra rhetorically raises this question. It's a very good question. He says, if you say, but don't these deities with animal heads and so forth also exist in the system of others? Meaning, outside Vajrayana, right? In folk religion, don't you have deities that look like this? He says, yes. The reply is, they do exist outside of Buddhism, or outside of Vajrayana. And there may have been some merely shallow instructions on how to perform the rituals, meaning there might be some instructions even that resembles what we're talking about here in Vajrayana. However, since there is no understanding of the meaning, there's no understanding of the meaning. What this means is, in these other contexts where these animal-headed deities might exist, so-called maybe pagan, maybe shamanic, whatever you want to call it, right? He says, there, the true meaning of what is going on is not grasped, is not given, is not taught. Therefore, this teaching is intended for those who say that it is not necessary to practice the deities of mantra as possessing the major and minor marks. So it says this teaching, meaning this point raised here, is in response to those who say, all the deities of Vajrayana, they are more about what sentient beings need, what sentient beings might be attracted to, and therefore Buddha's compassionately, compassionately, almost like you could have a sense of like compassionately and slightly regrettably, that Buddhas have to manifest these weird forms just to get them in. Kyopa's point is like, no, it's not. These forms are related to Buddha qualities. In a way, the implication is also, to me, although this is, I think, might be debatable and controversial, to me, I think this understanding then allows us to not be so rigid. So that when we see the deities, that other religion, other systems that they accept, we don't have to think, oh, these are mundane gods. These are mundane gods. Oh, we don't have anything to do with mundane gods. But rather, if we have the right understanding, we can recognize that these are Buddha aspects, Buddha qualities. Now, of course, we draw the line where then if somebody says, oh, therefore to this deity we have to, kill 2 goats or 3 chickens or even a human, like, the deity never demands things like this. Yeah. So this is related also to the point that, whether the deity is or isn't a deity, meaning whether the deity is or isn't a Buddha, more important than whether they are or they are not, is our understanding. Because in the end, we need to sort out our own understanding and sort out our own perception in that sense, right? So the main point of training in Vajrayana is to train to have pure perception. Yeah, pure perception of all phenomena. So learn to have pure perception. Rinchen Changchup explains that according to the general view, the major and minor marks of the Buddhas, of the vehicle of characteristics, appear due to the immeasurable causes that were previously accomplished. In contrast, however, the forms of the deities of mantra, so Rinchen Changchup says, the general view is that, the way Buddhas are represented, like Buddha Shakyamuni, the more conventional, right? The non sexy, scary tantric deities. Yeah, they say that general view is that the major and minor marks of, say, the form of Buddha Shakyamuni, those are due to the immeasurable practices, right, that Shakyamuni did in so many lifetimes that then led to his perfect form. Yeah, the general view says that. Then they say, however, in contrast, the forms of the deities of mantra, of Vajrayana, are manifested to train the various beings that need training. In other words, the deities manifest their forms in agreement with disciples' individual needs. In other words, in agreement with disciples' individual confusions. Yeah, so this is the distinction being made. That whereas, the classic form of a Buddha is the perfect form with the 32. So when we talk about 32 and 80, right, that is, very specific characteristics related to the way that Buddha Shakyamuni is represented. For example, it says, right, like there's an urna here, this curled hair, how, his fingers are all of the same length. So you see, the way Buddhas are represented, like Buddha Shakyamuni form. And then there's an urna, on top. The earlobes are very long. So all those, right? So this other view says then, therefore, then what about, say, Vajakilaya, Vajabhairava, Hevajara, Vajabhairava has horns, has horns, is the bull. Some people jokingly said that he turned up at the Capitol 2 days ago. The guy with the horns, Vajabhairava turned up. So they say, however, the forms of the deities of mantra, of Vajrayana, are manifested to train all the various beings. In other words, the deities manifest their forms in agreement with the disciples' individual needs. So Dorje Sherab, the other commentator, gives examples. He says, quote, when they tame those who are full of desire, the Heruka and consort of the Supreme Yoga Tantra are in union as the principal deities of the mandala. So in other words, it says, when Heruka, when the Buddhas manifest for the sake of those who are consumed with desire, therefore Buddhas appear in the form where they are in sexual union. To tame Chakravartin, meaning to tame like those who are kings, kingly light, those who are occupied with concerns of power and prestige, rather than lust and desire, they appear as Guhya Samaja, a kingly like figure. And for those full of hatred, they appear as the great wrathful gnosis being. So those who are angry all the time, Buddhas appear in a very angry form. And for those full of delusion, as the ones with animal heads, because animals represent delusion, or the chief, right, afflictive emotion for animal realm is delusion, and so they appear with animal heads. And for taming the Lord of Death, Buddhas appear as the exalted Bhairava, and the bull-headed and the killer of death. So then this is also related. Then the way this is understood is people think, oh, I'm going to practice a wrathful deity because, I'm a very angry type. Gilbert Rinpoche said, that would be a mistake. Right? The anger, the seemingly anger represented in these wrathful deities, it's compassion. It's not anger. It's nothing to do with anger. In some, states Rinchen Changchup, some people claim that the deities of mantra that appear with dark colors, fierce forms, animal heads, and so forth, lack the qualities of the major and minor marks. Or as Dorje Sherab summarizes this position, the deities that were taught within the vehicle of the characteristics and perfections, meaning general Mahayana, and by extension, of course, Hinayana, possess the 32 major and the 80 minor marks endowed with light and immeasurable masses of light rays. So generally, Buddha Shakyamuni, Buddha Amitabha, Buddha medicine, they are so light, so peaceful. These are the 32 major and minor marks, However, the deities of mantra appear without the major and minor marks because they appear in a manner that tames whoever needs taming. In contrast, then, Vajrayana deities, In other words, here, is a way of thinking that says, therefore, Vajrayana deities are all kind of only temporarily true. Yeah. Of course, this view these days, no Tibetan lineage would say that. Yeah, or would say that explicitly. Yeah, maybe during Kyoba Rinpoche's time in the 12th century, there were some who had some reservations about Vajrayana. Yeah. And who said, no, those are not necessary. Those are just, for those who need that kind of weird things. Yeah, we should just stick to, Buddha Shakyamuni. Yeah. That's probably the context of the 12th century. But beyond the context of the 12th century, I think the take-home lesson for us is really to remind us not to fall into this trap of saying, oh, I'm a desirous type, so I'm going to go practice deities who are in sexual union. Or I'm like a very, impatient, angry type. I'm going to go practice the wrathful deities. Because when you do that, then the forms of the deity get pulled down to the mundane level. So in the Lojong instructions, right? The 7-point Lojong, one of the lines, it says, don't turn deities into demons. Don't turn deities into demons. And that's how, a lot of times, don't turn Buddhas, into confusion. Don't turn deities into demons. In Chokyi Dragpa's commentary, the Tibetan text of Hevajra Tantra has the term Tsokden in the second line, which is sometimes read as possessing accumulations. In the Sanskrit text, this is Suginari Yutta, that which possesses good qualities. The commentators usually take this as a reference to the Buddha's disciples. Since the Buddha is here the deity Hevajra, who speaks of himself in the first person, the disciples are the deities of his retinue. Thus, this is all the accomplishment of the deity of a single continuum, and therefore it is also endowed with the major and minor marks. Yeah, this is some technical detail that Sobish provides. It also shows that, the Tibetan translations are, whenever we say, to translate is to interpret. Yeah? There's no direct, one-to-one translation. Every translation is an interpretation. So it says in the Tibetan version of the Hevajra Tantra, Tsokden is possessing accumulations. If you go back to the original Sanskrit, then directly translating from Sanskrit, it can say that which possesses good qualities. So here from this understanding then, you can say that in a mandala, a Vajrayana mandala of the deity, where all these different aspects are shown, those disciples are to be understood as possessing the same qualities as the main deity. So this is 5.7. Let's see if there are any questions or comments about this. No? Good? We're good? See?
Bien, muy bien.
Bien? Okay. Next statement. 5.8. One must take the deities and so forth that the sutra and tantra teach as the principal ones. So this statement is made again within the context of the 12th century in response to those who emphasize what they see in their visions, in their personal visions and dreams. So here the statement is saying, no, primarily we should rely on what is clearly given in the sutras and tantras in terms of idam practice. Yeah, don't get carried away by, even if your teacher says, oh, I had this dream, I had this vision, where this particular aspect of Tara, and then he gives you or she gives you a form that is, not attested to. And here it's saying, it doesn't even matter if this vision, this dream is authentic or not. But primarily, this is the word here, principally, primarily, you should focus on what is already established. In other words, the established tradition of these deities. So again, there is a 12th century context to this, because a lot of people were, having these amazing experiences, and then maybe to kind of gather more disciples, make more excitement. You're like, oh, I have this form, I have this experience, yeah. And then, of course, there's also the dharma tradition, right? The tradition of buried treasures. They say, oh, I found this treasure where, there is a form of Avalokiteshvara that is like this and that is like that. This is not necessarily criticizing the dharma tradition. This is calling caution to how, principally, we should focus on what everybody already agrees, that this is what, this tantric text, this tantra, this sutra, He Vajra, Chakasamvara, Vajakilaya, whatever, right, has been established. Then principally we rely on this. If you have personal visions, if you have personal dreams, keep it to yourself, and maybe check with your teacher or whatever, and don't like. And of course, as students, as the ones who are still practicing, we don't run off to follow this kind of oddities or divergences of this type. So before we look at Choda's commentary, I think look at Sobish. He provides context. Then, of course, 12th century, there were a lot of people kind of claiming like, oh, I have this special vision. This practice is based on my special this, special that. Today, you still have people who have who and this is not even saying whether these people are really having authentic vision or not. That's not even the point. The point is, like when we have, clearly what the Buddha taught and what the lineage masters have verified through their experience, when those are still available, then those are the things that we should practice, principally. If there are other things can enhance your principal practice, maybe okay, But even that is saying, like don't rush into these kind of private experiences. According to Rinchen Changchup and Doje Sherab, some people, having practiced the stage of generation for a long time with great effort, so these are often arising from people, it's not people just sitting around thinking up deities. These are like through the power of their meditation. Yes, they have, these special occurrences. Have through the dependent origination of channels and winds, meaning, on a more subtle level, that things are moving, things are changing, then they receive direct visions of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, or deities. These visions, however, sometimes deviate from what is in the Buddha's teachings, from what has been taught and has been passed down. They make drawings of deities. So some of these people, they make drawings of deities that lack the major and minor marks, or of a single hand among clouds. So apparently there was one tradition where, just like that, in the 12th century. So apparently there was a teacher who said, I have a vision of a hand like this. This is Tara's hand. So then he had a hand painted and he tells everyone, okay, now you meditate on this hand. So when I start telling the Drigong Dhammakirti people, to meditate on that hand of our logo, then you can say, he's going crazy now. This is how people get carried away, something that, on some level, it's nice, have a logo or whatever. Then from there, this is this, this is that. Now you should meditate just on this hand. On this hand with the Hong syllable, with the sun and the moon. This is our brand. So even in the 12th century, people were, in contemporary terms, branding themselves, it's like promoting a brand, a particular specialty, or a single hand among the clouds, a solitary head without a body, or for the great awakened one, a flat stone to sit upon, or the glorious Lamo wearing a servant's garment. Sobish is unclear with his own translation, like, that's kind of weird. But apparently, so this is like, they justified this by saying, I have accomplished this. I've had such a vision. And they teach it to others. So in a way, it's it's like, again, if I start saying like, okay, Santa Claus is Jambala for sure. So now let's visualize Santa Claus, That's like when you go, I don't think I want to do that practice, Good. You should say that. No, I don't think I want to do the practice. But if I say, which I do say, Santa Claus is like Jambala. That will help you, right? To see, Santa Claus is about generosity. It's about that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's quite a difference, between saying, the Virgin Mary is Tara, right? To help you kind of appreciate. Then to say, okay, now, when I practice Tara, instead of visualizing Tara, I'm going to visualize Virgin Mary. Then you're on your own now. It's not even saying whether Virgin Mary is or isn't Tara. That's not where the quarrel is. The quarrel is there is no authentic realization. It's not based on realization and verified by, a lineage of masters that have, grasped this reality, right? So here, and they teach it to others. He says, I've accomplished this. I've had such a vision. So now let's all practice this, In short, they claim reliability based on their experience and realization, and thereby disregard the Buddha's teaching of sutra and mantra. According to Rinchen Changchuk, the example of the single hand among the clouds goes back to a geishe in Tsang. Tsang is one area in central Tibet, who is said to have seen the hand of Tara extending from the clouds and made a drawing of a cloud mandala from which a hand extends. Yeah, so this geishe from Tsang, he says, okay, now, because he had a vision of Tara's hand coming, maybe to rescue, or, Tara, famously, this hand is to give assistance. So this geishe who saw this vision got carried away, and had people paint, some sort of cloud mandala with a hand and say, okay, let's now practice this. There seems to be some disorder in the different editions of the text where the commentators discuss images of the Guru. Nevertheless, the essential message is clear. Namely, so this is regarding the depiction of a Guru. Namely, that a depiction of a Guru must portray him as possessing the qualities of an awakened Buddha. Namely, with the major and minor marks, and not as he appears to the unawakened eye. Therefore, depictions of gurus are, like deities, visions of pure reality. So this line here, in the 12th century commentary, right? There are some questions about when we depict our Guru. Should we depict our Guru as closely to as what the Guru looks like, or should we depict the Guru closer to what conventionally we have said the Buddha looks like? This is an interesting point here. Nowadays, of course, we have cameras, we have photos, right? So we think, to put a picture of the Guru on the shrine, yeah. Then now even they have like, make like big cutouts of the heads of lineages, and they put on the throne, like in some monasteries, not just framed photo. Then with 3D printing, one of these days they're going to print, because now they already make it, like statues, big monasteries of the Guru, sitting there. Yeah. Now, on one level, of course, it's inspiring, people who have connected with the Guru, but the commentary back here, I think, is asking us to be a little bit careful with this. Yeah. Don't go too far in this. Yeah, clearly the debate in the 12th century, even though they don't have cameras, they have the ability, right, to have painters to paint gurus exactly, right, down to a mole here, right, a blemish here, yeah, maybe one ear slightly bigger than the other ear, and maybe the nose slightly crooked, or they have the ability to reproduce very exact portraits of the gurus. So there was some debate there. Should we paint the gurus this way, or should we paint the gurus with the major and minor marks, right? So meaning, like, should we clean up the portrait of the Guru so that the Guru appears more Buddha-like? According to these commentaries, that's what we should do. Now, from some perspective, you might say, oh, that's why, you know, all those paintings of Guru figures, they're so boring. They all look like, you know, a template. Exactly, actually. They want it to look like a template, follow a template. And what's the template? The template is the way in which Buddha Shakyamuni has been depicted. So this is not just a question about artistic ability. This is really reminding us the true Guru is not this body. Yeah, it's not this form. Don't get carried away. And it's easy for us to get carried away, to get into the personality cult, so to say. And what's the problem with that then? The problem with that is that that's the theistic problem that we talk about. Then we think that person is going to save us. Then we think that person is going to do the job for us. Yeah, this has become such a kind of, almost people think, you know, like putting pictures of gurus on the shrine and, you know, bigger and bigger portraits of gurus on the shrine, you know. It's the right way to go. Or has to be the way. But here it's saying, be careful. Years ago, when we started Urban Dharma, when you come into Urban Dharma, and then even now when you came into Urban Dharma, if you have familiarity, especially with Tibetan Buddhism, you probably recognize, oh yes, this is a Tibetan Buddhist center. But then of course you will also recognize, oh, the aesthetic is a little different. It's a little bit like a combination of Zen and Tibetan. Well, it's true, you know, there's just... But then one of the things, you know, people who are more familiar with Tibetan centers will quickly kind of pick up on is like, where are the pictures of the lamas? Where's the picture of the gurus? So when we first started, there were different versions of a rumor that went around. I heard about them. That Urban Dharma is a fringe Tibetan Buddhist cult. The reason, not because Han Lai is such an evil person, maybe he is. The reason, there's no pictures of the Dalai Lama. There's no big picture of the Dalai Lama. And then somebody even said to my face, you know, where's the picture of the Karmapa? I'm like, that's really weird. First of all, we're not Karma Kagyu. Of course, these people think the Karmapa is the head of all Kagyus, and therefore we have to put the Karmapa's picture. And so this person, you know, said, but that's based on this thinking, you know, like, oh, these pictures of the heads of the lineage, or the picture of your guru or whatever is really important. And this is part of the tradition. No, this is not part of the tradition. In fact, the tradition is very careful to say, be careful, you know. So this tradition of putting, you know, photos of the guru, I mean, how can that be very traditional when, you know, photography wasn't created until recently? And even if the technology of photography was available, very limited, as in you get a very good painter to paint exactly what the person looks like. Even then it was decided, no, we should not do that. Now, of course, it's not the case that, all depictions of all gurus were identical to each other. You can tell now, paintings from the 12th century, oh, this is Jigten Sungren, yeah? Oh, this is Sherab Jungne. Oh, this is, Dakpa Jungne. Yeah, oh, around the 12th century also, oh, this is, somebody else. Oh, this is somebody else. Yes, yes. Yeah. They did incorporate the features, but in incorporating the features, they were also careful to walk that balance between the 32 and 80 minor marks expectations and the more distinctive individual characteristics that makes it recognizable to say, oh, this is a portrait of Jigten Sungren. Like this portrait here is said to be very, very much gives us a good kind of photo, so to say, of what he looked like on the cover of this book. But even that, it says, it should not be, because, so this is the same emphasis in a way from the last point. Ultimately, when we look at Buddhas, whether our guru as Buddhas or Idam as Buddha, what we are looking at should point us to the Buddha qualities. Yeah, should point us to Buddha qualities. A version of this debate, although this kind of debate is much stronger in like Judeo-Christian tradition. Yeah, because in that tradition, there is a long-standing resistance to depicting the divine in human form. Right? So in the Jewish tradition, absolutely no representation, right? In the Muslim tradition, absolutely no representation of the divine in any kind of human or worldly form, right? Then within Christianity, generally speaking, Protestants don't have, but the older Christian churches, however, the Catholic and the Orthodox. So and interesting, if you're interested, you can read about Orthodox. So orthodoxy is different from Catholicism in terms of the depiction of the ideal, right? We can call divine the ideal, whereas Catholics allow three-dimensional, like statues. Yeah, Orthodoxy never went to that degree. Orthodoxy kept it as flat, two-dimensional icons, they call, in a technical way, flat. And the rules of painting icon in Orthodoxy is very much like tantra painting. You cannot like just, oh, creatively I like to do this, I like to do that. No, you have to follow the dimensions and everything, and that's all established. And and there's a whole debate there, like a whole like principle and arguments as to why it should not be turned into like a statue, even if you have the technology to do that. Yeah, so it's kind of a similar debate there. It's like, it's like, be careful not to. So they say that, so the way Orthodoxy would kind of speak to both Protestants and Catholic is towards the Protestants. I think Orthodoxy will say, you are completely denying the fact that in our theology, Christ is both human and divine. So therefore, unlike pre-Christ religion, meaning Judaism, where God is just completely divine, therefore any human, right, form to represent God or godly qualities is wrong. With Jesus, I don't know how much Christian theology you know, but with Jesus, according to Christian, is two natures, completely fused, human and divine. So orthodoxy says, therefore, we can legitimately have the human form. But then to the Catholics, Orthodox will say, but you have gone too far when you make it so human, right? Three-dimensional, so real, in human terms, that you have taken that too far. So Orthodoxy kind of maintains a middle ground, in this idealized form of icons. I think it's very similar what's going on here. Yeah, this point about how to paint, how to represent the guru. It's like, no, it should not be completely realistic, because not that immediately that becomes a problem, but that is liable to kind of encourage us to think of Buddha or Guru as mundane, ordinary. Can cause us to think, Guru Yoga is about, how close can I get to the Guru? How many lunches can I eat with the Guru? How many, photos can I be seen with the Guru? So all of that, we get distracted into thinking that's what Guru Yoga is. That's what devotion to the Guru is. Neither is it completely abstract. So this,
Dr. Lai?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw a video from these guys who are they talk about politics and campaigning and stuff, and they team up with an art guy, and they both a video about the Catholic Church changing their way to depicting, all religious images from 2D to 3D, and to be more, like more human-like.
Yes.
Way to contrast the Protestantism, and because people could relate more with the images, because they were more human-like.
Yes.
So they were not depicting divinity per se; they were depicting humanity.
Yes. Yeah. So same here, it's saying, where is that, sort of be careful. When you have so humanized it, and so in other words, in our terms, it's like samsarized, So the more, in a way, right? I mean, we can certainly appreciate, right, of the humanizing aspect, because it helps us connect better. No doubt about that. Yeah, no doubt about that. But again, we have to be cautious about that. So even like, if imagine this, if we paint like the different gurus, right? Or we take a picture of the guru, and then like with the modern technology, we take the picture of our guru, right? And then we use like Photoshop, right? And to Photoshop the guru more into a Buddha-like, yeah. Of course, you get criticized for doing that, okay? So don't do that. I'm just saying, let's think like that. And if everybody does that, start doing that, then one of the effects could be that we begin to emphasize less that the differences between the gurus. Right? And it will minimize, my guru is better than your guru. My holiness is better than your holiness. Right? Imagine there's a rule that says, not allowed to make, individual gurus photo, but everybody should have Buddha Shakyamuni's photo and say, oh, this is Dalai Lama. Oh, this is Gongchik JAN. Oh, this is Karmapa. This is how Karmapa looks. This is how Dalai Lama looks, right? This is how Gongchik JAN looks, right? So then, I think in that way we can be reminded, it's not, right, the human side of the guru. It's the dharmakaya of the guru that we are. Ultimately, that is the most important, is the dharmakaya of the gurus. Here, not related to this, but since we're talking about this topic, in His Holiness a few years back, in response to actually the problem of people using Photoshop to Photoshop current living gurus. And they did this with His Holiness, actually. There was a tanka-like, this is, people with computing skills. They produce a photo. I don't know the details, but basically they produce a photo where I think they have the two holinesses, right? Very Buddha-like, yeah, but clearly it's the face of the two holinesses, like into like some tanka arrangement. Then I think there was like Gongchik Rinpoche and maybe Nuba Rinpoche and Kenjen Rinpoche or something like that, And it started to circulate online. At that point, His Holiness wrote a letter. He says, he made a statement and he said, according to the inner teachings of Jigten Sumgön says, this will create obstacles for the guru and will create obstacles for the disciples. So please don't do that. And he says that even though our training is to train to have pure perception of the guru, that is talking about training our minds. It's a method of meditation. But on the level of like painting the guru into the tanka, living gurus specifically, is what Jigten Sumgön says. Living gurus should not be painted into tankas because it will create obstacles for both the gurus and the disciples. That's what Jigten Sumgön says. Jigten Sumgön understands the interdependence, the dependent origination involved, and he warned against that. Now, again, he's not saying, I would say, like absolutely this will go wrong, but he's saying that you're opening a door that will create obstacles for the guru and for the disciples. So His Holiness said, please don't do that. Stop that. Good? Questions, comments? So the broader also implications of this, about painting, about like variant forms of the deities that's based on your realization or your visions, your dreams, you know. It's like, it's private, you know. Keep it private. You know? If you have things like that, you know, keep it private. So what that also means is that even like instructions that you hear, you know, that you get from your teacher, for the most part, keep it private because it's intended for you. And if you do share it with a fellow practitioner, if you do, I think it has to be with like disclaimers, you know, with caveats, and say, you know, this is just what I was told, you know, and your situation could be very different, you know, and you need to check in with whoever that you consider your guide and see what works. Yeah. So I think it's also that. Then primarily we rely on, yeah, what's clearly being taught by the Buddha. The private kind of pith instructions, that's not for public consumption. And not for public dissemination either. Yeah. Okay. So starting next week again, this class meets Monday and Friday. Then Wednesday we have the DDIS. Unfortunately, then probably you all also know, the situation with the pandemic means we have quite a few more months to go. For sure, I think at least half of this year, if not 3/4 of this 2021. Although, not to depress you, now at least, you know, like the tunnel, the light at the end of the tunnel is seen at least, you know. Before it was all just dark, right? All just dark, and so the distance remains about the same. The distance of how to get out of this tunnel is still the same, but at least now the light has been seen, but nonetheless that distance didn't get shortened necessarily. Yeah, but at least now no longer just groping in the dark, it seems. So which means, you know, like we will have time, even if we only meet twice a week, you know, I think, to finish chapter 7. Of course, King Yama's private program for each of us, who knows? King Yama's appointment book with each of us, it's hard to say. So also don't forget that. Chanchu Semchu Rinpoche Ma Ge Banam Ge Gyurche Ge Banyam Pa Me Pa Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Bill Show. Okay, ta-ta, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you.